What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going over 10 things Marvel wants us to forget about Spider-Man. And let's get straight on the list with number 10, Spider-Man's parents as cyborgs. A lot of us wonder about Spider-Man's parents and why they left their own son with Aunt May. Well, what we do know is that they were secret agents for S.H.I.E.L.D. Anyways, to make a long story short, little is known about Peter's parents, but probably one of the dumbest story arcs is when we find out about cyborg versions of them in hopes that the web slinger would reveal his true identity. When the two cyborgs finally figure out Spider-Man's identity, they both try to return to him to tell him what they discovered. However, our hero follows and begins to fight his cyborg father, while his cyborg mother sits this one out and cries about how she does not want to be evil. The weird story tried to bring Peter's parents back in this physical/emotional/psychological battle that ultimately ended up being forgetful and unimpressive. Number 9, Spider-Man has killed. People who have only seen the Spider-Man movies might think that the web slinger is a prime example of a hero who strictly follows a no-killing code. This is only enforced by the famous quote, "With great power comes great responsibility," being said to him. But in reality, Spider-Man has killed people on multiple occasions, with only some being unintentional. He killed the supervillain Moondark by pushing him into a portal that unavoidably leads to his fatal fall of the Golden Gate Bridge. Spidey doesn't seem to have any remorse, however, and actually makes a joke about it. In Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, our wall crawler accidentally punches Wolverine's friend, Charlie, in the face. The punch kills her and absolutely devastates Peter Parker with all the guilt and shame this brought on him. It just goes to show that even superheroes can make mistakes, and their mistakes can lead to the deaths of innocent lives and tarnish the near godlike status they hold in our minds. Number 8, Spider-Man's villain, Warrants. Every hero has at least one villain counterpart that we'd rather not talk about, and perhaps the best example in this case is Walrus. Originally Herbert Carpenter, this large man wears a suit resembling the animal he's named after, as well as possessing the speed and strength of a walrus. This should already make sense as to why he was never much of a threat, as walruses certainly aren't known for their agility. He wasn't a very ambitious villain either, usually choosing to commit simple property damage as his means of chaos. The final reason Walrus hasn't made an appearance in any big name movies is the lack of impacts he's had. His track record includes being easily defeated by the likes of Deadpool, Frogman, Spider-Woman, and of course, Spidey. With powers so lame, it's amazing this villain got the green light in the first place. Number 7, Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy were a thing. It's hard to call this anything but gross and strange. The Sins Past saga tells a story of a time when the first Green Goblin had an affair with Gwen Stacy about 6 months before her death. In this time, Osborn got her pregnant with twins in the hope that they would grow up and defeat Spider-Man. Now, if you've been doing the math, you realize that those kids had to have been rather premature, right? The reason for this comes from the Goblin formula in the twins' blood, as passed down by Osborn. This accelerated their aging process, making them fully grown at the age of 10 when they first attacked Spidey. While their time together might have been a short fling, it's still worth remembering that Spider-Man's first love spent a time with his arch nemesis, even parenting kids with him. Number 6, Spider-Man used to have a Spidermobile. Arguably one of the coolest forms of transportation in comics, Spider-Man shoots his webs from building to building and is able to swing through the sky like a true hero for all of New York City to see. It's hard to believe that the writers would give him any other form of transportation, but they did in the form of the Spidermobile. He got the vehicle when two advertising executives on behalf of Corona Motors asked if the webhead could promote a car built by them. At first, Spider-Man refused, but when thinking about his life as Peter Parker, he knew that accepting this gig would help pay for rent. Obviously, the car is a total miss, and within a few issues, it's done away with by Mysterio, who is a supervillain. The car has been referenced and even made a couple cameos here and there, but everyone knows at this point it's a gag and a joke rather than anything serious. Number 5, the Clone Saga. Also known as the Spider-Clone Saga, this is known to be perhaps the most controversial storyline in the Spider-Man world. It started in the 70s and then reappeared in 1994. This later follow-up series was stretched to twice its initially planned length due to high sales at the time. This prolonged length is what caused the controversy surrounding the story, as changes made to the plot were often unpopular. Because Spider-Man was struggling like many other comics in the 90s, writers decided that the best way to grow his popularity was by making more of him, of course, The story, centered around clones of main characters in the series that often confused fans as to who was really who. This became more and more muddled with time, and the plot became very sloppy. With time, the storyline became rather controversial, with many fans feeling a mix of love and hatred for the arc, with a heavier emphasis on the hate. This comes together to make a storyline that Marvel doesn't seem to be interested in bringing back, as reception wasn't all too good. Number 4, Spider-Ham. It seems like Marvel likes to turn their heroes into animals every now and then. In the comics, our hero becomes Peter Porker, or Spider-Ham. The series lasted 17 issues and was built on humor and parody. Peter Porker got his abilities when his aunt tries to create the world's first atomic-powered hairdryer. She accidentally electrocuted herself with the device and then bit Peter, who then got his powers and became Spider-Ham. In the series, he teams up with other heroes like Captain America, and they fight crime together. Surprisingly, Spider-Ham has made several appearances in video games, TV shows, and other comic books. Number 3, SpiderMan Got Molested. Unless you already know about the standalone comic, it's kind of hard to believe that it even exists. Created in 1984, Marvel and the National Committee of the Prevention of Child Abuse teamed up to make this comic to raise awareness about the subject. In the comic, we found out that Skip Westcott, who is emphasized to have come from a broken home, molests Peter, who later shares this information with his uncle and aunt. While this story has important lessons about how to handle sexual abuse, it's strange that there's no mentioned repercussions for Skip in the story after Peter reveals the event to his family. This comic was certainly made for good purpose, but being so offbeat from the usual crime-fighting scenarios we see the web-slinger in, I guess it makes sense why so few people go back to reread the events of Peter's abuse nowadays. Number 2, SpiderMan's Sidekick Alpha. Spider-Man has a sidekick that only appeared in a handful of issues out of hundreds, and there's a reason for that. Andy Maguire was a student who went to the same high school as Peter Parker. In a demonstration by Peter Parker, Maguire gets struck by Peter particles and eventually obtains some sort of hyperkinetic power in which he can control energy. Marvel wants us to forget about Alpha because he was a terrible hero. Letting fame and fortune get to his head, the teenager used his power carelessly and often caused so much chaos. An example is when he teamed up with the Avengers to fight Terminus. Alpha used his energy powers carelessly, which caused the plane to shut down, and Spider-Man took a majority of Maguire's abilities away for being a reckless hero. Number 1, Spider-Man killed Mary Jane with sex. Well, that's just unfortunate, isn't it? In the 4-issue miniseries from 2006 and 2007 called Spider-Man Reign, we hear the story recapped by Spidey himself, about 30 years in the future. He explains that the reason he gave up the mask and persona was because of the tragic death of his wife Mary Jane, which he was indirectly responsible for. The first question many people have from this is how, but you'd probably regret asking. Apparently, the radioactivity of Spider-Man's love fluids gave Mary Jane cancer through prolonged exposure. In his own words, "Loving me killed you," which would be a lot more tragic if it wasn't so weird. Overall, this storyline gave a gritty and thoughtful look at Spider-Man's future and was executed in a great way. Reign met good reception, it was a great work of comics, but it's so hard to forget that bizarre detail that Marvel put in as much as they might want you to. And that is it for the video, guys. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Valplana, and I'll see you all later.